And we are off. Welcome to the Inner Sanctum number 3 or 4 for this year. I'm losing count now. You're with KAren Swain. Our guest today will be Garnet Schulhauser, who I've just spoken about a little bit before. We've got a few people that are still to come online. But these sessions are about deliberate creation. I call them deliberate creation for the New World teachers, because I've been teaching deliberate creation or law of attraction for many years now, but I realized that the people that are attracted to my work and the people that I help, both through the radio show and through my sessions, are always people that have an intense desire to make a difference in the world. And so these are sessions for people who want to know how to flow their energies so that happens. Because I just put a post on Facebook about who are the New World teachers. And many years ago, when I was teaching Theta Healing, which is an energy healing workshop, I was teaching people how to tune into their guidance, how to see inside bodies like medical intuition, how to become psychic and all that sort of stuff. We did a lot of channeling with people, talking to their higher selves and going up to the Akashic. And it was about 15 years ago, and we talked about the New World teachers not being spiritual teachers or gurus as they have been in the past, like you sit at the foot of the guru, but the New World teachers are the artisans, the singer-songwriters, the poets, the children, the mothers, the fathers. They're the people that are awakening to their powers of creation, to their knowing that we're connected and that we're all one. There are people that have had an NDE or a spiritually transformative experience who are writing blogs or putting them in books or putting them in songs. So the New World teachers look like they're the children with Asperger's, they're the children with autism. I've had clients that have come to me with their children, like one in particular didn't speak verbally at all, but he communicated telepathically, as we all do, but his non-verbal communication made us wake up to the way that we all communicate telepathically and through our feeling sense. And so there are teachers coming to the world now through the children that have extraordinary abilities that mainstream have diagnosed them as having some sort of disorder. But in fact, they're just teaching us a new way of communicating and being in the world, because when we expand our empathy, we expand our empathic body, and we know how somebody else thinks and feels, when we understand that we're all one and that my sadness is your sadness and your joy is my joy, then obviously the problems on our planet will cease to exist, because that empathy reaches beyond the humans, obviously, into the animal kingdom and into Mother Earth, and understanding that it's all conscious, we're all a conscious being that is having a physical life journey, even a tree, even a rock, even an insect. And when we understand that empathy, that we are all one, then humanity will shift, the consciousness will shift. So these are just reminders from home sessions to shift consciousness, to remind us that we are all one, and that what I see in you is me, and what you see in me is you. And so I've interviewed some of the most amazing New World teachers. One of them is down the bottom here, Alyssa, who puts her music out, who puts her wisdom out into her music. And if you want to see her story also, just go to my webpage. You'll see Alyssa Nathaniel. I had a fabulous conversation with Alyssa. How long ago? About a year ago?
It was about April, May last year. I think we had it. That was beautiful chat. I loved it.
Yeah, and Alyssa's story is like many people who, even though she was already out there talking, putting out her love into her music, she went through some really intense life journeys, which just really deepened that knowing and that understanding of who we are as source energy. And it's a beautiful story. So if you want to see Alyssa's story, it's online, and hear her music. She makes incredible kirtan music in a sort of jazz, R&B, blues way, don't you, Alyssa?
I do.
If you have any questions, please ask me. So this is about how you create the reality that you want to live. And really, the New World teachers are not as much personally focused as how do I create my reality, like how do I earn money or get what I want, but how do I create the reality so that I can impact and affect change and make a difference in the world. And so if you have any, questions on how to do that, what comes to mind is I posted on, and I sent out the email as well on my Facebook page, this woman who's really upset about Trump. And she was doing the work with Byron Katie. So Byron Katie is one of my favorite teachers because she really has a tool that gives us the availability to overcome our stressful thinking. So when you put yourself out there, even just as a human being, really, you don't even have to be a New World teacher, because everyone who is here on the planet wants the same thing. We all want to feel good. We all want to enjoy our life. And when we're believing our stressful thoughts, that's not possible, because the belief in a stressful thought makes you feel terrible. And so whatever's happening in the world, hello, Garnet. He's sorting it out. Whatever's happening in the world, we look outside of ourselves and we see what's happening in the world, and we make that the reason to not feel good. And so that's happening intensely at the moment with amazing, New World teachers, creative, what does he call them? Creative, conscious creatives, people that really want the world to improve. They want to, they want the politicians to help the world, but they're looking on at someone like Trump and they're shaking their fists and saying, this shouldn't be, and they're in anger and upset and outrage. And that vibration is not the vibration that affects change. It's just not. So I posted on my Facebook page, a little snippet from one of Byron Katie's sessions with a woman who was just outraged that Trump had become president. And you go through her journey and see her completely transform and realize that her outrage was not so much about Trump. It was just an outrage that she carried, this upset, this, I want you to understand my suffering. And she'd carried that all her life and realized that she could drop it. It wasn't serving her, because she said something really interesting. She said, if you understand my suffering, if you see my suffering as real, I had this crazy thought that somehow that was going to make me feel better. And she just had this instant realization that that was just the craziest thing. I mean, you validating my suffering doesn't actually make my suffering go away. And in that moment, she just dropped it. It's just beautiful to watch as she rips up the piece of paper and just completely gets over her outrage and her suffering. And that's the work that we do, because when we get over our upset, our disappointment, or our suffering, we tune into a vibration, we lift our vibration, we raise our vibration, and we find that connection with our wisdom, with our talent, with our genius, with our creative inspiration. It all comes back when we drop the suffering and the outrage. Welcome, Garnet. How are you?
I'm good, Karen. How are you?
Great. Thanks for joining us. Garnet contacted me, it was the year before last, wasn't it, Garnet? And he said, so, yeah. And he shared in an email, he said, I'd like to share my story with you on your podcast show. And as soon as I read the first couple of lines, because a lot of people contact me and I usually go, oh yeah, sounds kind of interesting, let me investigate. But as soon as I read the first couple of lines, I went, oh wow, this sounds amazing, let me investigate. So I listened to a couple of podcasts and then connected with Garnet. And I have to say, your books, they're amazing. They're amazing. Brad and I were talking before about how they are very simplistically written. And you said to me that Albert, your spirit guide, had said to you, please make it simple so that people can understand it, make the writing really easy to understand. So we might take it over to you, Garnet, and you can just share a bit of your story.
Well, some of you have heard this before, but anyway, I was a lawyer for most of my life, for about 34 years, practicing in Calgary. And how my life changed was that and how I met Albert was I was just strolling down the street one sunny afternoon in May, and out of nowhere, a homeless man just jumped in front of me, and he just stopped me in my tracks. And he was looked like a typical homeless person, except he had these amazing, dazzling blue eyes, and they were sort of penetrating deep within me, right down to the depths of my soul, and at the same time sending me this wave of pure, unconditional love. It was an amazing feeling, like something I'd never felt before. And so the long and the short of it is that he just sort of disappeared out of my life, and I went back the next day, and I saw him sitting on the same street, saw him sitting all alone on a bench. And I went to him and I said, "Who are you, and why did you stop me the other day?" And he said, "I'm a soul just like you. I'm here to answer your questions and help you on your journey." And so that was the beginning of a dialogue I had with him that went off and on for the next several months. And he told me that he was actually one of my spirit guides, and that he had manifested himself as a homeless man in physical form to get my attention and start the conversation. And he told me I was the only one who could see him in physical form. I not only saw him, and I could actually feel him. I reached out and touched him. He was there. He was solid. But so we had this conversation, and after the first 3 times, he no longer manifested physically. And he was just a voice in my head, and we communicated by telepathy. So after the first 3 times, I would just go alone in a quiet room, and I just do a quick quiet meditation, and then I would say, "Albert, are you there?" And his voice would come through, and I knew it was him because I recognized his voice from when he was the homeless man. And so then we'd have a conversation, and it was a question and answer, and I would ask him questions and he would answer. And then he surprised me a bit early on by saying to me that he wanted me to write a book about his revelations, that he had chosen me to be his messenger, one of his messengers. He has many, and that he wanted me to write a book, which took me aback a bit because I'd never ever thought of writing a book before. And I was a bit reluctant, but with some gentle persuasion on his part. And I've since learned that there's no point in trying to argue with spirit. They're always going to win eventually, one way or the other. And Albert did. And so he persuaded me. And so I then, about a year after I met Albert, I retired from practicing law because it seemed to be no longer very relevant. And I was kind of tired of it anyway at that stage. So I retired and charged off on my new path, which Albert had sort of shone the light for me to follow, which was to be an author and his messenger. And so I finished the manuscript sometime after that, and I was still a bit reluctant because I thought, this is very different from how people knew me, because I was very much of a straight-laced, button-down corporate lawyer who never talked about spirituality or religion or anything. And so I knew that it would shock a lot of people if I published my book. So I debated with myself for the longest time, and then finally I said, "To heck with it! I'm just going to get it published." And so that led to my first book, Dancing on a Stamp, and it was quite a change for me. I lost some friends along the way, some former law partners and colleagues and clients who basically probably thought I was going senile, and they didn't really say that to my face, but they just stopped talking to me and stopped communicating. And so I knew that they probably thought that I was way off left field somewhere. But I met a lot of other wonderful people who really signed on to what Albert was telling me. And so overall, it's been a very positive experience. And so after the first book, Albert then appeared again in my life in somewhat different form. He just sort of showed up one night in my bedroom. I woke up at the start, and I saw this sort of ghost-like figure standing in the doorway of my bedroom. And I didn't know what was going on. And then when it approached and got closer, I could see it was Albert, but he was in astral form. And I said, "Hi, Albert. Nice to see you. What brings you here this time?" He said, "I'm here to take you on a series of astral trips because I want to take you to the spirit side. I want you to meet a number of very interesting and wise souls in the spirit side who all have a story to tell you about their lives on earth. And there's a lesson for you and for all humanity in every one of these visits. And I want to take you to other places in the universe and to other places on our planet, so you can see some of the awful things that are happening on our planet, like abuse of humans abusing one another, abusing animals, polluting our planet. And I want you to write about everything you see and everything you hear." So there I was, and he just literally reached out and grabbed my astral hand and pulled my astral body out of my physical body. And I knew I was just a different experience for me. I'd never done this before. I turned around and looked, and my physical body was still sound asleep in my bed. So anyway, okay, Albert showed me the way, and he just sort of took me by the hand. We rose up through the ceiling. When you're in astral form, of course, you can pass through solid walls, and you can basically get from point A to point B virtually instantaneously. So he took me on my first trip then to the spirit side. Those adventures led to my second book, Dancing Forever with Spirit. And then when I was finished that episode, he came back again in astral form, took me on a different series of trips. I met different people, went to different places. And that was my third book, Dance of Heavenly Bliss. And after that was over, he came back once again for some more astral trips. And that led to the writing of my manuscript for my fourth book, Dance of Eternal Rapture, which isn't released yet, but probably will be sometime in the summer of 2017. So that's where I am with Albert. I've had a delightful series of astral trips with him, and I'm very happy to be his messenger.
And with all this, Garnet, what's been the most profound thing that you've learnt with all these adventures with Albert?
Most profound thing is that, he really disclosed the reason that we're here. And I've been constantly asking myself questions as all the way through my life is like, okay, who am I and why am I here? I mean, am I supposed to be doing something that I'm not doing? And how do I find out what I should be doing? Like, why am I here? And so he said, it's like, I, like everyone else here, we chose to come here. We're eternal souls. Our true home is the spirit side. And we chose to come here to confront lessons and challenges, and learn things, experience things that we need for our growth and evolution as souls. So it's our choice. So when I stare at my mug Monday morning in the mirror and say, why am I here? The short answer is, I chose to come here, even though I don't remember it. And same thing with you, KAren, you don't remember it either. And that's by very deliberate design, because, if we remembered where we came from, what we had put in our life plans, it would be too easy for us. So the big challenge of the life on earth is that we don't remember where we came from, and we have free will to act. And so we'll very often stray off course. So that was very profound for me. The other thing which sort of ties into it all is that, unlike how I was raised as a Roman Catholic, where I was taught, there's this being called God, the Almighty Being, who put us here for some reason. God made a bunch of rules for us to follow. And if we break those rules and we don't make amends, when we die, God will judge us. And if we're bad, he'll send us to an awful place called hell. That's what I was taught as a child. Albert said, nonsense. There is no hell. There is no judgment after your death. And everyone goes back to the same place. We all go back to where we came from, which is the spirit side, or as some people call it, the other side, or beyond the veil, or some religious people call it heaven. That's where we came from before we're born. And that's where we all go back to, no matter what we do. So no matter how many wrong turns we make, and no matter how many mistakes we make, we're always going to end up back there. And we learn something from everything we do in this life. And so when we finish our lives here, we go through a life review, and we go back in very vivid detail and look at everything we did during our lives, the good and the bad, and we learn things from that. And so that's the whole purpose of being here, of incarnating here, is to learn and experience things. But we try to choose our experiences beforehand by picking out various things like, our name, the place we're going to be born, the identity of our parents, the first language you learn, the first schools we go to. That's sort of all set up for us before we're born. And when we're born, we can't change that. But from then on, once we sort of learn to exercise our free will, we can change things. And sometimes we will do things that our soul had not really planned for us. But that's okay. And, you always learn something no matter how far off course you may stray. The good news is, you can't screw up. I mean, you're going to end up back where you came from, no matter what you do. And so what we need to do is look at life as an adventure. It's like, okay, I'm here to learn. I'm going to struggle and try to find my way through on the journey that I planned for myself. I'm going to try to listen to my guides, because they're always telling me which way I should turn. Try to have some fun, even though quite often life on this planet is not a lot of fun, as you know. But anyway, that's to me, that was the great revelation. Is like, okay, now I know I'm here in a general sense. I don't know specifically myself, but I know generally that I planned it, and I know what I'm supposed to be doing here, which is try to learn and experience things, and try to embrace love and compassion, which is what we all really should be striving for. And at the end of the day, if I've made too many mistakes, I can come back, and I can keep coming back over and over until I'm satisfied that I've learned everything I can learn on this planet.
Okay, so, the reason that you're you're doing what you're doing in this lifetime, that you have this amazing access to, who we are beyond the veil, is because humanity is going through this great shift. And Albert has really sort of awakened you to share his message, as you say, that you share Albert's message and his adventures. So although we can't make any mistakes and we all go back to love, we all return to love, we are as a collective making some mistakes. And because of that, Albert sort of awoken you and said, share this message with the world. So what does he say about that?
Well, he says that, and this is the same message I got from the Council of Wise Ones on the spirit side, is that humanity right now is at a very crucial point in its development, that we've got very advanced technology, but our spiritual and emotional intelligence has not kept pace. And so all too often, there's too many of us who let our negative emotions like fear, anger, hate, and greed get out of control and rule our lives. And he says, because of that, that's why that's why we're in such troubled times on this planet. That's why there's so many murders and so much genocide and wars, conflict, terrorist acts. You just have to turn on the news any night and you can just get a belly full of all the bad stuff that's happening on our planet. And that's just a result of too many people, give in to their fear and their anger and their hate, and they don't embrace love. And he says that we really have to focus on embracing love and compassion. And if you fully embrace love, there's no room for fear, anger, or hate. Love is totally all-encompassing if you fully embrace it. And if we do that, then there won't be any abuse of humans abusing one another, or humans abusing the other animals on our planet, or our lovely, beautiful Mother Earth herself with our pollution. And that's where we really cause a lot of the problems. Where, as he termed it, we're sort of like an invasive weed. We're sort of taking over the whole garden and choking out all other life. And that's what we're doing with our planet right now. Like, we've just basically taken over. And we really need to stop that. We need to stop polluting our Mother Earth. We need to stop abusing the other animals that share our planet. And first and foremost, we need to stop abusing one another. And we abuse one another through direct violence, through neglect. There's so many countries on our planet that have a lot of wealth, and there's so many countries that are very poor, and their citizens are starving, don't have clean water or clothing or shelter. And he says, if
there you are, you're back. You froze for a minute. Can you hear us?
Maybe Albert is trying to shut me down because I'm going on too much.
Look. Yeah, maybe. Okay, let me ask you this. So I think that everybody on this call understands exactly what you're saying. They know that they know, and they know that they're a part of the shift. They're a part of the ones that are here to spread a message of love and to help people raise their vibrations. Have you got anything to share with us about how we can best do that?
Well, the best way to raise your vibrations is very simply is to fully embrace love and compassion, because our negative emotions hold us back. They hold back our vibrations. They hold back our ascendancy. And as long as we let negative emotions be part of our lives, then we're not going to ascend. We're not going to increase our vibration. So we have to embrace love and compassion. And, and there are other things that you can do as well. I mean, like minor things like Albert says that eating animal products will slow down our ascendancy, won't stop it. But he says if you want to get there really fast, become a vegetarian, which I haven't managed to do yet. But he says that's a way of helping your cause.
That's so interesting. You haven't managed to do that yet, because I keep quizzing you. I keep saying, "Are you a vegetarian yet, Garnet?" And you go, "No, not yet, Karen."
Not yet.
But
I'm trying.
I just had this client yesterday who has this amazing 11-year-old who, anyway, it's a long story. He can't be schooled because he's so crazy intelligent. And he is just forcing everyone to be a vegetarian. He forced his parents to be a vegetarian and everything like that. But I want to talk about, because in your fourth book, you got a story about a woman who ascends. I'd love you to share that story, because, I've always heard about the story of ascension. I've been talking about it for 20 years. We're ascending, ascension. And I've heard some crazy stories about what that means. But There's a woman in your fourth book who has that experience. Do you want to just share that with us, what happens to her?
Yeah, I met the soul on the spirit side, and Albert introduced me to her. And in her last life on Earth, she had quite an amazing experience. She had a very tragic encounter early on when her family was in an automobile accident, and a drunk driver had basically slammed into them and killed her husband and her children. And she was just devastated. She was broken up. She was filled with hate and anger at this driver, having taken away basically her whole life, because that's all she knew, her husband and children. And so she was really filled with hate, went into depression, was having a heck of a time. And then a friend of hers said, well, maybe what you need to do is to go to an ashram in India and try to see if they can help you get over all the hate and anger and everything else that's troubling you. And so she did. She sort of thought, well, I have nothing to lose. I'm sort of at the bottom of the ditch right now, and so I need to sort of take a step to forward. So she went off to this ashram in India, and at first it was kind of difficult. I mean, it was basically, they taught her how to meditate. She was in group meditations. Very difficult for her to do, because every time she started to meditate, she got visions of the accident scene and of this other driver who had killed her family, and the hate welled up and anger, and so it was really tough to sort of get that out of her mind. But she tried. She struggled, and she slowly but surely learned to meditate, like in groups, and then she learned to meditate sort of by herself. And then gradually she sort of let her life become filled with love, and she sort of pushed aside the hate and the anger, from her past experience. And then one day she was meditating alone in the garden, and for quite a while, and her whole being was filled with love. And she woke up, and she was in a different place. She was in a new earth, because she had basically raised her vibrations through her very deep meditation and her embracing love. She had raised her vibrations, and she had ascended basically to the new earth, which is our planet in a higher vibrational level. And so she did that, and she was very happy, of course, to be in the new earth, which is a wonderful place. No negative emotions, and there's no crime, and you don't have to work, and there's no money, and all those other good things. And she was quite happy there. And then, of course, in the new earth, it's still in the physical plane, but a much higher vibrational level than Earth. But so eventually those physical bodies do die on the new Earth. They live much longer than we do, but they do pass. Her spirit had passed back to the spirit side. And I said to her, so when you reincarnate, or if you are you going back to the new Earth? And she surprised me. She said, no, I'm going to go back to the old Earth, because there I think I can help other people who are struggling with the emotions that I had, help them on their journey, and maybe help them make an ascension. So she was ready to sort of jump back into the fray on our, troubled planet, where she could have just decided to have an easy life on the new Earth. So very courageous soul, somebody who really wanted to help our planet. And she said, I know I've got relatives and people back there on the old Earth that need help, and I'm gonna jump in there and see if I can do something good. That's really quite an amazing story.
So it's interesting that you talk about this new Earth. And if anyone has a question, please ask, put your hand up and or unmute yourself and ask a question, because I've got you all muted at the moment. But you've spoken about, in one of your books, you've spoken about this new Earth. So it's a complete replica of planet Earth as everything that exists here, but there is a different consciousness there. And obviously, because there's a different consciousness, there's different physical attributes, like no money, and you don't have to work. And you've said, like, the question is like, well, what do you do if you don't work? And then you said you just pursue your desires or creative abilities. Like if you're a scientist, you pursue that. If you're an artist, you pursue that. Or if you're a family person, you pursue that. But there's no need to work, because we're all supported. Everyone supports each other, and there's no money. Don't you love that? I love that. Do you think, or has Albert told you that this Earth will ascend to be like that? Or in order to experience that, we have to ascend to that Earth? Like, that's something that I'm a bit confused about.
Well, it's sort of both. When I had a conversation with Gaia, she said, in my last conversation, actually, she said that she would like to ascend and sort of merge with the new Earth. She would like to raise her vibrations. What's holding her back basically are humans and all of our negative emotions. And so we're holding her back. And so if we get our act together and we can raise our vibrations, then she can come along, and we're not holding her back, and she can eventually ascend as well. So right now she's sort of stuck in this physical plane because we're holding her back. And so that's why she's encouraging us to mend our ways, change our ways, stop polluting the planet, stop abusing other people, other animals, embrace love. And then if we can sort of raise our vibrations, she will come along with us, and eventually, hopefully, we can all get there. But in the meantime, individual humans can make the ascension, as I mentioned with the lady that I talked to on the spirit side. We can individually go up to the new earth. We don't have to go all together. And a lot of people have done that. It's some people go in small groups, some people in larger groups, some people just individually. It's sort of like one day you're here and the next day you're gone. And it's just, that's just how it happened.
So Garnet, there's been a lot of stuff in the press about, spiritual groups getting together and talking about ascension, and then they find all their bodies like dead and stuff like that. That's not the same thing, is it?
No, because when you do an ascension, your physical body actually ascends up. You don't leave anything behind. It's not like death when your physical body's behind and your soul travels up to the spirit side. It's actually your physical body will actually move up to the new earth. It'll ascend. And so you will literally disappear from this planet. Your physical body will. There's nothing left. There's no corpse. There's no remains. You're gone.
That's extraordinary. I find that extraordinary.
So if I suddenly disappear from the screen, maybe I've ascended.
No, you haven't given up eating meat yet, Garnet.
I know. I know. Thanks for reminding me.
But it's got to be a choice, this ascension thing. Like at some point, your soul is choosing to do that or not. I mean, there are a lot of people that are on this planet that are of that high vibration, that have raised their vibration to be love and light, and they haven't ascended. So, they're vegetarians and they're love and light and they're spreading love and light. So they're here, they're staying to help others do that. I mean,
perhaps in some cases, but most cases they've raised their vibrations, but not sufficiently high enough to get to the new earth. So they're vegetarian. They seem to live a very loving life, but maybe deep down inside they're harboring some negative emotions. Maybe they've got some anger that's boiling away there, or something else that's sort of holding them back. You can't really tell from outward appearances, but I think that some people may deliberately choose to not ascend. But most people just aren't aware of the path that's available to them. So, like this lady, she wasn't aware, the lady I talked about that ascended, she wasn't aware of ascension. She was just in deep meditation, learned to fully embrace love and totally cast aside her anger. And then it just happened. She didn't, opened her eyes. She was just in the new earth, in a different place. She didn't really realize what had happened until she talked to some of the people in the new earth. And then she realized it. So, and those people who are trying to ascend, if they're still here, they haven't quite raised their vibration sufficiently to get there is the only answer. And I don't know if some of them deliberately choose to not do that. I don't know. I mean, I would think most humans, if you have a chance to ascend to the new earth, you would do that. At least I certainly would.
Okay, so there's so much to share because you've been through so many other experiences. Has anyone got any questions?